Right, hands on the wheel.
This is my damn vehicle. What are you pulling me over for this time?
Don't get smart. You match a suspect driving a stolen SUV.
Check the plates then.
I'm not playing this game with you.
You're the one escalating this.
I'm the
Look at my ID on the dash.
Then get out of the car.
Jason Weber had been with the San Antonio Police Department for 17 years. In those 17 years, he'd accumulated 35 formal complaints. 29 of them involved black men he'd pulled over without legitimate traffic violations in affluent areas near military bases. A black serviceman in uniform driving a new car was stopped for suspicious vehicle operation. A black officer in a BMW was detained for improper lane change that dashcam footage later disproved. A black veteran driving from the VA hospital was searched for drugs during a routine stop with no violation. A black airman was handcuffed for matching a description that was never verified. A black soldier was arrested for resisting when he asked for the reason for the stop. A black Marine in dress blues was pulled over for erratic driving when he was going the speed limit. A black naval officer was detained for suspicious behavior with no articulated violation. Every complaint ended the same way: internal affairs review that cleared him, use of force justification that protected him, bias training he attended but dismissed, union grievances that blocked discipline, written warnings that accumulated in a file nobody acted on. One Wednesday afternoon in San Antonio, his 17-year pattern of pretextual stops targeting black men in nice cars near military installations finally confronted someone who didn't just serve in the military, someone who commanded thousands of troops, who advised generals on strategic operations, who held one of the highest positions an enlisted service member could achieve, and whose arrest would trigger a military investigation, congressional hearings, and a crisis between civilian law enforcement and the armed forces. That confrontation would end Weber's career, cost the city $6 million, and expose a department that had ignored 35 complaints over 17 years. Command Sergeant Major Marcus Johnson, a 48-year-old senior enlisted leader at Joint Base San Antonio, was driving through the city after a briefing at the Pentagon when he saw flashing lights behind him. His military ID was in his wallet, his service medals were visible in his vehicle, his briefcase with classified documents was on the passenger seat. No traffic violation, no erratic driving, no legitimate reason for the stop, just a senior military leader driving through his own city. But Officer Weber saw him through a lens so warped by racial assumptions that he couldn't process a black man in a Dodge Charger as anything other than suspicious. Certainly not as a command sergeant major who advised colonels and generals, and definitely not as someone whose arrest would become an international incident involving the Department of Defense. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Hit that subscribe button. These stories expose the truth. San Antonio, Texas, near Joint Base. San Antonio, one of the largest military installations in the United States, home to over 80,000 active duty personnel. The area was known for military families, defense contractors, and service members of all ranks. It was 3:45 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, temperature 90°, clear skies. Traffic was moderate as military personnel and civilians moved through the city. Command Sergeant Major Marcus Johnson had been in the United States Army for 28 years, currently serving as the senior enlisted advisor to the commanding general at Joint Base San Antonio. He'd enlisted as a private at age 20, worked his way up through every enlisted rank: private, specialist, sergeant, staff sergeant, sergeant first class, master sergeant, first sergeant, sergeant major, and finally command sergeant major, the highest enlisted rank in the Army. He'd served 3 combat tours in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, earned a Bronze Star with Valor, a Purple Heart, and numerous other commendations. He'd graduated from the U.S. Army Sergeant's Major Academy, earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Maryland while serving, then his master's in organizational leadership from Norwich University. As a command sergeant major, he was the principal advisor to generals on all enlisted matters, represented over 20,000 enlisted personnel, and was one of the most senior enlisted leaders in the entire Army. He commanded respect from privates to generals. He'd testified before Congress on military readiness. He earned $98,000 annually in base pay plus allowances. He drove a personal Dodge Charger he'd purchased with his own money, a car he was proud of, earned through decades of service to his country. That afternoon, CSM Johnson had flown to Washington, D.C. for classified briefings at the Pentagon, then flew back to San Antonio. He'd changed out of his uniform into civilian clothes, khaki pants, and a polo shirt for the drive home. He was heading back to base when he'd decided to stop at a store first. He was obeying all traffic laws, driving carefully, listening to a military podcast about leadership when he noticed a patrol car following him for several blocks. He checked his speed, 32 in a 35 mph zone. He'd signaled every turn. He'd stopped completely at stop signs. Then the lights came on. Do you think officers should state violations immediately during traffic stops? Drop your answer below. Officer Jason Weber had those 35 complaints over 17 years. 29 involved black men near military bases. A pattern so extreme and undeniable it should have ended his career years ago. But San Antonio PD treated each complaint separately, never acknowledging the systematic bias or the unique problem of harassing military personnel. Weber's supervisors had recommended his termination 4 times over 9 years. Internal Affairs had flagged him as high risk multiple times. Military commanders had complained directly to the police chief about Weber harassing their service members. Yet he remained on patrol because the police union had successfully blocked any serious discipline, arguing Weber's stops were legitimate law enforcement and that military complaints were attempts to avoid civilian jurisdiction. His personnel file contained documentation of complaints from active duty personnel, veterans, and military family members dating back over a decade, yet he remained on patrol with full arrest authority. That afternoon, Weber was patrolling near Joint Base San Antonio when he saw a black man driving a Dodge Charger. No traffic violation occurred, but Weber followed him for 8 blocks, looking for any reason to justify a stop. When none materialized, he pulled him over anyway, planning to claim suspicious driving behavior in his report, a tactic that had worked dozens of times before. CSM Johnson pulled over carefully, put his car in park, turned off the engine, placed both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, and took a deep breath. He'd led soldiers through combat. He'd faced enemy fire. He'd lost soldiers under his command. He knew how to stay calm under pressure. He kept his hands visible and waited. Weber approached the driver's window with his hand already on his weapon, his body language aggressive, his tone immediately hostile. "Pull over immediately." CSM Johnson spoke calmly and with military bearing. "Officer, I've pulled over. Can you tell me the reason for this stop?" "License and registration. Don't ask questions." The command sergeant major's training kicked in. He'd taught thousands of soldiers to stay calm, be respectful, know your rights. "Officer, I'm asking respectfully. What traffic violation did I commit? I have a right to know the reason for the stop." Weber's hand moved closer to his weapon. "Step out of the vehicle right now." "I'm going to need a reason for this stop first. I was traveling below the speed limit. I signaled all turns. I stopped at all stop signs. What is the legal basis for this traffic stop?" "You're being difficult. That's obstruction." CSM Johnson remained absolutely calm, his command voice clear. "Officer, I'm not being difficult. I'm exercising my constitutional rights I've spent 28 years defending. I'm Command Sergeant Major Marcus Johnson, United States Army, Joint Base San Antonio. My military ID is in my wallet. I'm the senior enlisted advisor to the commanding general. I just returned from Pentagon briefings. I'm asking for the legal basis of this stop." "Should military leaders be arrested during traffic stops? Let me know what you think." Weber sneered with visible contempt. "Yeah, and I'm the Secretary of Defense. Everyone's military when they get pulled over. Get out of the vehicle or you're going to jail." "I'm serious, officer. I'm a Command Sergeant Major with 28 years of service. I've served 3 combat tours in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan. You can verify through your dispatch. You can call Joint Base San Antonio. You can contact the Provost Marshal. I'm a senior military leader. Last warning, out of the car now." CSM Johnson pulled out his phone with one hand while keeping the other on the wheel. "I'm activating my recording. Officer Weber, badge number unclear, San Antonio Police Department, has pulled me over without stating a traffic violation. I've identified myself as Command Sergeant Major Marcus Johnson, United States Army. I'm a senior enlisted leader being detained without legal basis." Weber opened the door forcefully. "You're under arrest for obstruction, resisting arrest, and impersonating a military officer." "Impersonating? I am a military officer. I'm a Command Sergeant Major. This is a catastrophic mistake." Weber grabbed CSM Johnson's arm and pulled him out of the vehicle roughly. CSM Johnson didn't resist physically but spoke clearly and firmly for his recording and for passing motorists. "I am not resisting. I am complying. I am Command Sergeant Major Marcus Johnson, United States Army, Joint Base San Antonio. I am the senior enlisted advisor to the commanding general. I command respect from 20,000 enlisted personnel. I just returned from classified Pentagon briefings. Officer Weber is arresting me for driving while black. I've committed no traffic violation, no crime, no obstruction. This is a violation of my Fourth Amendment rights I've defended in combat for 28 years. Motorists were stopping, several recognizing military bearing even in civilian clothes. That's wrong, one shouted. He said he's military, another yelled. Weber handcuffed CSM Johnson, the metal tight on his wrists that had carried wounded soldiers to safety, that had saluted generals and been saluted by thousands of troops, that had signed orders affecting military operations. He walked him toward the patrol car while CSM Johnson continued documenting in his command voice. I am a 28-year Army veteran. I am a command sergeant major. I advise generals. I've served 5 combat tours. I have a Bronze Star with Valor and a Purple Heart. I was at the Pentagon today for classified briefings. Officer Weber has arrested me for driving while black in San Antonio. I have witnesses. I have video evidence. The time is 3:58 p.m. My military ID is in my wallet in my vehicle. This will have serious consequences involving the Department of Defense. Weber placed him in the back of the patrol car roughly. Through the window, CSM Johnson could see his Charger with the door open, his military briefcase visible on the seat, his service medals and military memorabilia visible in the vehicle. He was mentally cataloging every violation while also thinking about the command implications. He'd have to notify his commanding general, contact the provost marshal, possibly inform the Pentagon, and this would become a matter between civilian law enforcement and military leadership. The drive to the station took 29 minutes through San Antonio traffic. CSM Johnson spent it thinking about his soldiers, his command responsibilities, the message this would send to military families, the investigation this would trigger. They arrived at San Antonio PD's Central Division. Weber walked him inside, still handcuffed, past a desk sergeant who looked up and immediately recognized military bearing despite civilian clothes. Weber, what's the situation? Traffic stop, obstruction, and impersonating a military officer. The sergeant frowned immediately. Impersonating military? What's the evidence? He claims he's some kind of high-ranking military officer but couldn't provide immediate proof. CSM Johnson spoke up, his command voice filling the room with authority. Sergeant, I am Command Sergeant Major Marcus Johnson, United States Army, Joint Base San Antonio. I am the senior enlisted advisor to the commanding general. I've served 28 years, including 5 combat tours. I hold a Bronze Star with Valor and a Purple Heart. I attended classified briefings at the Pentagon today and was driving home when Officer Weber pulled me over without stating a traffic violation. My military ID is in my wallet in my vehicle. My credentials can be verified through Joint Base San Antonio, through the Pentagon, or through the Provost Marshal. I am a Command Sergeant Major, one of the highest enlisted ranks in the United States Army. The sergeant's face went pale. Command Sergeant Major? From Joint Base? Yes, Sergeant, and this arrest is about to become a matter between your department and the Department of Defense. The sergeant looked at Weber with growing alarm. Did you verify his military status? He was being difficult, wouldn't provide immediate proof. Did you contact the base? Check his ID? Call the Provost Marshal? He was driving suspiciously. Within minutes, the station erupted. The sergeant had called Joint Base San Antonio. The Provost Marshal answered, confirmed CSM Johnson's identity and position, and immediately escalated to the base commanding general. Within 15 minutes, a colonel from the base arrived with military police. Within 20 minutes, the San Antonio police chief had been notified. Within 30 minutes, the city manager was involved. Within an hour, the Department of Defense had been notified. The story was already breaking. A senior enlisted military leader arrested while driving home from Pentagon briefings. The colonel, accompanied by military police, addressed the station commander who'd rushed in. Command Sergeant Major Johnson is one of the most senior enlisted leaders in the United States Army. He advises generals on all enlisted matters. He represents 20,000 troops. He was at the Pentagon this morning, briefing senior leadership on readiness issues. This arrest is now a matter of significant concern to the Department of Defense and will require coordination at the highest levels. A deputy chief arrived. James Martinez, a military veteran, himself who'd been documenting Weber's pattern of harassing service members. He reviewed the situation, spoke with the colonel, confirmed CSM Johnson's identity and position, watched dashcam footage showing no traffic violation. He approached CSM Johnson, still handcuffed, and removed them personally with visible respect and shame. Command Sergeant Major, I'm a Navy veteran. This arrest was completely unjustified and an embarrassment to this department and this city. You're being released immediately with our profound apologies. This should never have happened to anyone, and especially not to a senior military leader. He turned to Weber with controlled fury. You arrested a Command Sergeant Major, a senior enlisted advisor to a general, a combat veteran with 28 years of service and a Bronze Star with valor. You accused him of impersonating a military officer when he is one of the highest-ranking enlisted leaders in the Army. Badge and weapon. You're suspended immediately pending termination and federal investigation. Weber finally grasped the magnitude. Deputy Chief, I didn't know. You arrested a Command Sergeant Major returning from Pentagon briefings. You've generated 35 complaints in 17 years. Military commanders have complained about you specifically. Supervisors recommended your termination 4 times. The union blocked it. Now you've arrested a senior military leader. This is an incident between civilian law enforcement and the Department of Defense. Your career is over. Badge, weapon, now. By that evening, the story had exploded nationally and within military circles worldwide. Every military publication covered it. A Command Sergeant Major arrested while driving home. The military community was outraged. Veterans organizations issued statements. Congress announced immediate hearings. The Department of Defense launched an investigation into the treatment of military personnel by civilian law enforcement. The Secretary of the Army personally called CSM Johnson. The story became a crisis point in civil-military relations. CSM Johnson held a press conference in uniform, his command presence evident, medals on his chest. I'm a Command Sergeant Major in the United States Army. I've served 28 years, including 5 combat deployments. I've led soldiers through combat. I've advised generals. I was at the Pentagon yesterday briefing senior leaders. Today I was arrested for driving while black by an officer who saw a black man in a nice car and assumed crime. He didn't see a soldier. He didn't see a senior leader. He saw what his biases told him to see. And even when I identified myself with specific details, my rank, my position, my Pentagon visit, he accused me of impersonation. He paused, his military bearing commanding the room. 35 complaints in 17 years, 29 involving service members, veterans, and military families. 4 supervisors recommended his termination. Military commanders complained about him. The union blocked discipline every time. San Antonio PD protected an officer who was harassing the men and women who protect this nation. That's not just wrong. It's a betrayal of the military-civilian trust that underpins our democracy. CSM Johnson filed a comprehensive federal lawsuit 19 months later against Officer Jason Weber, his supervisors, San Antonio PD, and the city. The allegations were unprecedented. Unlawful traffic stop of a senior military officer without probable cause, false arrest of a Command Sergeant Major in violation of the 4th Amendment, false imprisonment of a military leader, assault on a senior enlisted advisor, deprivation of rights under color of law, racial profiling, interference with military duties, damage to military-civilian relations, intentional infliction of emotional distress, deliberate indifference to Weber's pattern despite military complaints, and violation of federal laws protecting military personnel from harassment. The complaint included Weber's complete record: 35 complaints over 17 years, 29 involving military-connected individuals, 4 termination recommendations blocked by the union, complaints from base commanders. San Antonio city attorneys found the case indefensible and politically catastrophic. Dashcam showed no violation. The defendant was a Command Sergeant Major. Military leadership was demanding accountability. Congress was investigating. The Department of Defense was involved. Weber had zero legal basis for the stop. The pattern showed deliberate indifference. The city settled 24 months later. $6 million paid to Command Sergeant Major Marcus Johnson, one of the largest settlements involving a military member. Officer Jason Weber was terminated immediately and faced federal charges for deprivation of rights under color of law against a military officer. He pleaded guilty and received 36 months in federal prison. His name entered the National Decertification Index with notation about military harassment. CSM Johnson testified before Congress and the Department of Defense. I'm a Command Sergeant Major. I've led troops in combat. I've advised generals. I was arrested for being black. 35 complaints. 4 termination attempts blocked. Military commanders complained. The system protected Weber while he harassed service members. I had rank, resources, and the Department of Defense supporting me. Most service members don't. If this can happen to a command sergeant major, imagine what happens to privates and corporals. San Antonio and the Department of Defense implemented unprecedented reforms. Automatic investigation at 2 similar complaints involving military, federal oversight of stops near bases, military liaison officers to handle complaints, elimination of union protections for harassment of service members. Weber is in federal prison. The city paid $6 million. But that came after 17 years and 4 block terminations. Comment if harassing military personnel should carry enhanced federal penalties. And if these stories matter, hit that subscribe button. This isn't about one officer or one command sergeant major. It's about protecting those who protect us and systems that enabled abuse for 17 years.